Hey, solopreneurs, Gabe here. Today we have Laurie Seymour of the Baca Institute. Stay tuned to the end so you can learn how the name the Baca Institute came about. It's actually a pretty cool story. Laurie is an innovation alchemist, a 2 times international bestseller, host of the Wisdom Talk radio podcast, and helps entrepreneurs accelerate the time from ideation to implementation and ultimately revenue. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation, so give it a listen. Laurie, thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, Gabe, thank you for having me on. I am really delighted to be here and I'm looking forward to a dynamic conversation.
I think it's going to be fun, and I'm excited because you and I are going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is taking the whispers that come up in our heads and figuring out how to take them from whisper to reality and even in business and profit. And that gets me pretty darn excited because I kind of live by whispers lately.
Ah,
Yeah, I've been living by whispers lately.
do you want me to be interviewing you? I might have to ask you questions.
You know what? Let's go fair game. Yes, if you want to
Okay,
ask me questions, you go right ahead.
okay.
But before we go there, I would love to hear your story.
Mm, thank you. I think I came into this world really curious about what was possible for me. In other words, I didn't feel at all connected to my family. I mean, it was all fine. It wasn't about anything traumatic. It was, I felt really different. I felt so different and I didn't know how to handle that, what to do with that. And so as I was making my way through school, I was very successful in school. I was drawn to psychology because I thought, this is how I can start to know more about myself. And in knowing more about myself, then, yeah, I'll be helping other people. And that felt really important too. But it was really that sense of somebody else has the rule book. And I don't necessarily mean like what was right and wrong to do, but somebody had maybe a better way to call it would be a guidebook. Some Everybody else knew the way things worked, and I didn't. And I was so wanting to know that. I think when I was little, or maybe middle school, it was part of I want to fit in because I didn't feel like I fit in. Later on, it became more of a driving, well, actually, it was like that inner whisper, not just in my head, but really in my heart, in my deepest part of me, that there was more. There was more, and it was like it was just out of reach. And my whole journey became looking for that, looking at what that was and how to seek that out. And so psychology was my first career. And I became a psychotherapist. I taught psychotherapy. I taught at the university level. I trained therapists. And then at one point, that wasn't enough. And I had some experiences that opened my eyes up to really that, oh, there's more here, even than, the psychological and the emotional. And part of that was the spiritual. But part of that, as time went on, I started to understand as having to do with energy. And then even further along in the journey, it was how are the quantum physicists talking about the universe and how we interact with the universe and how thoughts impact the universe, how we um, how we can have a thought and influence something across the other side of the world. So I'm bringing in like all these different pieces, and one of the pieces was first experience and then training in um, an energetic technology that really opened me up to what was possible. And I started seeing how my clients were changing much more quickly than when I was just doing therapy. I was changing, my whole life was changing. And the things that I felt like were really holding me back stopped holding me back. Particularly self doubt. Self doubt was my big one. And so I'd have a whisper, because we're talking about whispers here. I'd have an idea, I'd have a thought of something, and I would doubt it. I would doubt where it came from. I would doubt its validity. I couldn't possibly do that. That couldn't really be me. Um, that's probably not important. Those are the kinds of things that I thought, and it made me so sensitive to how doubt interrupts our own bringing. List first of all, listening to those whispers, and then bringing them into reality. You can have a great idea, and if you're constantly interrupting that, you don't really hear it, you don't take it in, and you don't make it real. And therefore, then, because this is a money podcast, you don't create the income, the exchange that is possible.
Very interesting. So help me understand. So you were teaching at a university level as a psychotherapist. So were you um, teaching other professionals? Were you teaching kids, or what were you teaching?
No, I was teaching. I was teaching at the graduate level. I was teaching psychology, and I was we part of a counseling center where I was actually the supervisor supervising the trainees who were offering the therapy. And so and I had a private practice. That was the bulk of my time. So it was a mix of teaching and being a therapist. And you know what I didn't put into the mix here, which is going to maybe blow some people's minds, is that somewhere in this whole journey of my journey, I needed to make some changes, and I wanted some different experiences, and I became a solutions engineer. And people in the company that I was working with, and the engineers that I'd be um, uh, teaming with, they'd say, "Well, how did you get to?" I'm like, "What? You were a therapist? Are you going to psychoanalyze me?" Um, they couldn't make the connection, and really, in a way, I couldn't either, except that it allowed me. My background had allowed me to not be limited by previous ideas. In other words, we are all trained in that linear model of growing up, that linear educational model. And I I was pushing those edges. And so even as a solutions engineer in a technical field, in a technical world, I was pushing those edges. And I was part of a team within a large company where that's what we were paid to do. And I was working with the largest companies like Google and Intel and Northrop Grumman and the Marines doing that very thing. So it showed me what was possible in a much bigger arena than I would ever have been able to have experience with.
So how did you go from being a therapist to a solutions engineer? But before you answer that question, what is a solutions engineer? What did you do on a daily basis as a solutions engineer?
We came up with unique solutions. I worked within a telecom company, and we came up with unique solutions to their communications problems. Generally, it was around a cellular coverage. It could be campus wide, it could be how they communicated with different parts of their teams. It could be, like, for example, Google. It was looking at not only all of their headquarters buildings, which kept increasing. It felt like every 6 months, and but also around the country. And so, working within, how do we do that? What if we might have there was I think it was a Hilton hotel in Florida, different locations, but close to each other. What could we come up with as a way to get the coverage from here? We build the infrastructure here, but how are we going to then do it at these other places down the road? And because I didn't know enough to say, oh, that couldn't work, that really held me in good stead. And I could bring in the teams that could make that happen.
Okay.
And what led me there? It was really one of those fortuitous kinds of opportunities, because I was looking for something to stretch me in some ways that I hadn't been stretched. I had a friend who was very high up in this company. They were looking for somebody, yeah, you can train the technical parts of it, but they were looking for somebody that had the rest of my skill set. that could track things, that could work with teams, that could communicate with clarity. And somebody gave me a chance.
That is interesting. I mean, you don't connect those dots very easily. I mean,
I would say that the closest I came to engineering in terms of training was that my oldest brother was an electrical engineer.
which isn't very close.
Actually, he was a space engineer. He was not even close to what to me.
This is a total tangent, but I feel compelled to say this. So anybody that's listened to this podcast for very long, I played college football, and the story of college football for me is not the superstar. It was the guy who didn't have his priorities correct and didn't really play very much. But I can still remember being at parties because the party scene was pretty big in our life during college, and I remember meeting people, and you would always ask two things. In South Dakota, you ask two things when you're at a house party as a college kid. You ask, what side of the river are you from? Which I didn't learn until I got there. See, the Missouri River runs through the middle of the state, and so you're either East River or you're West River is the first thing. So I would meet kids at parties, and I'm like, where are you from? And they would tell me some town, and I'm like, I've never even heard of that town. I'm from Iowa. Never heard of that town. And I would hear West River, and they'd be like, well, it's West River. Okay, so I know you're at least on the west side of the state. Well, the west side of the state and the east side of the state are kind of different. The west side of the state's a little more cowboyish, and the east side of the state's a little more cityish, if we'll keep it in the bluntest terms. So I would always get to understand where people were from. But then the next question is, what is your major? Because you're trying to figure out who these are. And at South Dakota State University, where I went to school, the main majors were pharmacy, nursing, ag, and engineering. Those were the big major schools when I was there. And I got an economics degree. I mean, like I told you, it was just not even the smartest place to go to college. But I went there to go play football. That story can be shared another day. But it reminds me of a conversation. I had met a gal that we were just meeting each other. Where are you from? What's your engineer? What's your major? And she goes, I'm an electrical engineer. And I went, oh, you're one of the smart ones. You're one of the smart ones. So those electrical engineers, the chemical engineers, those were like, whoa. I mean, the mechanical engineers were smart, but the electrical and the chemical was a whole nother level.
Yeah. My brother is very smart.
Yes, I mean, absolutely, just brains. And so I totally sidetracked our conversation, but it electrical engineer just took me right back to college, house parties, $5 keg glasses of beer, all you can drink, and off we go. So total side note, but you then make this transition from therapist to engineer, a solutions engineer, and you're working with some of the major companies in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you leave that to go and do whatever came next? What came next?
Okay. Even when I was doing that, because I had been working with this um, energetic technology, and I was brought into that to really be the representation of that, or the representative of that. And I'd been teaching that around the world. And so there was a time, and my teacher passed. And while I was there being a solutions engineer. And at some point, after a couple of years of just being with all of that, I knew that I needed to take this all back out into the world, and in a bigger way than I had, and perhaps in a different way. And really, I started that 2011, building the website, building my brand, building all those pieces out. But I was still being a solutions engineer. So I was doing two full-time things at the same time. And luckily I had a team because that kept me sane. And then at some point in there, it was, I can't keep doing this. And I'm really complete with the solution engineering piece. I need to go full time into that. And really it's been the last few years that the pieces have coalesced in a new way, bringing me to this place of working with the innovators. I call myself an innovation alchemist because I'm not working with innovation in the ways that a lot of the books talk about. I'm really working with the more of the fundamentals, the what's underneath, what skills, what foundation do we need in order to listen to the whispers, in order to take that idea into something that's not just there in the ethers. Because I'm I'm out there in some ways, and I'm very practical. I'm pragmatic, and so I'm that blend of pragmatism and visionary. And so I work a lot with the visionaries, with the innovators, with the conscious entrepreneurs, the thought leaders, and so very much the solopreneurs, the people that are saying, there's something here and I don't know quite what it is, or I do know what it is. I do have a sensing of it, but what do I do now? You know, and all that stuff around self-doubt really plays in a very big way in there of I couldn't do this. Or even what do I need? And people's tendency, and if we look at a lot of the ideas that people try and bring into reality, into form, the idea comes from a place, the whispers I think come from a place that we can't understand, that it's not something that's logical. It's that intuitive part of us, it's the gut instincts. And what I have found to be so important, and it brings everything that I have done into play here, teaching people how to listen, teaching people how to pay attention. What does it mean to pay attention? How does that connect with one's own purpose? And then not just then going, okay, I've got it. I've got the idea. I know what it is. And then going into that linear mode again, because they'll burn out. People burn out. They don't have the inner sustaining energy really to keep that going. So that's the place. That's a lot of my work with I call it inspiration into action, is around teaching people how do you connect with that inner compass, because that's what I call those inner whispers. How do you connect with it? How do you let it guide you? How do you let it influence you? And how do you use it to navigate? Just like a compass, how do you use it to navigate who needs to be on my team? Do I need to go in this direction? Who do I need to call today? What needs to be on my to-do list first? And in my life, when I look at that from my, more linear brain, I'm gonna rank them maybe in what seems most important, of course. But I have had the experience over and over and over again, and my clients have these same kinds of experiences. When I get quiet enough to listen inside and start to to value those inner whispers, I may have a sensing that what was fifth or sixth or seventh on my list, that's what I need to do right now. And so I've been trying to call someone for 3 weeks, can't ever get them. And I follow that whisper, and the person's there at the other end of the line and saying, I was just thinking about you. And those are some of the things that quantum physics actually can describe as to why that happens. It's not just out there. It's a real thing. And I would suspect no matter no matter who your listeners are, that they've had at least one of these kinds of experiences of paying attention and seeing it and going, wow. But if you haven't been trained, if that's not been part of your experience to pay attention to those, and I'm so glad, Gabe, you're one of those that says, I listen to those. If you haven't, then I'd say you're really missing out. And so I've become like that secret weapon of helping people in all the different ways that I do to learn how to pay attention, and then learn how to pay attention all the way through, so that the idea that was there in the whispers, that idea has an energy. It really has an energy sequence or frequency, and we can keep that alive. And because change is a constant, we need to be present to what's changing with that. How is it changing? And not try and sink it into concrete, thinking that's going to make it real.
Interesting. So let's go into that a little bit. How do you teach your clients to listen to the whispers? Let's start there because somebody's got to whisper.
Right.
How does someone listening today, driving down the road, out for a walk, whatever it might be, how do they tune in to listen for the whisper? How do we do that?
That's a great question. And I have two things that immediately rise to the surface to speak to. One is the willingness to get quiet, the willingness to take time. It doesn't have to be in what we call meditation, but the willingness to allow the busy mind, the chattering mind, to quiet down enough to hear the whispers, to see, where am I feeling? Another word for it might be the nudges. I'm feeling this draw to go over here. And I can't tell you the number of people that have said, I met my mate, my husband, my wife, my whatever, my partner, because I had this sensing to go get coffee at this coffee shop, and there I was talking to them with their waiting behind me in the line. So it's getting quiet. And this is why I do a twice weekly meditation online, a Terrain meditation live online, to give people that ongoing practice. Because we tend to get so caught up in our own busy lives that we don't set aside the time to do that. So that's piece one. Piece two is around what I call the feeling body. And it's learning how to pay attention to the feeling body. And the feeling body is not the emotional body. It's not that part of ourselves. It's that part of ourselves that really is about sensation. It's those gut instincts where you say, "Ooh, I walked into this room and my gut got tight," or, "Wow, I have such a sensing to go and do this. I have such a sensing to um, stop doing this part of my business, to let go of this client because I don't even know why. But because I've gotten quiet and that's what's arisen in me, I'm going to pay attention to that." And paying attention doesn't mean automatically doing that. This came up actually what I was just saying in a session yesterday, where a client said, "Oh, now I know." This is after being in meditation. She said, "Now I know what I need to do to take care of myself better. I've got to fire a client." Well, if we're solopreneurs, firing a client is a big deal. But that's been on the heels for her, and this is part of her own process or journey, has been, she was a teacher at a university, and she's an amazing book midwife, amazing, and book coach. And even though she loved the teaching, and even though the teaching was giving her income that was absolutely reliable, she could count on it, her inner whispers were starting to tell her over and over and over again, "You're complete here. It's time to move on." And finally, when she did that, because her own body was like, it was hard to get up to doing this, it was hard to get up in the morning to want to do it, she would pay attention to that feeling. And one by one, she let go of those classes. And now, what I can tell you is that she has more business than she knows what to do with. She is growing her company in really every way possible. And her big idea, really, of, well, how I talk about it is, building a publishing empire. She is doing collaborations and anthologies and her own writing and I, knocking the ball out of the park.
That's fantastic. So she was able to slow down and listen to, like you said, her, not only her thinking mind, but her also feeling mind or feeling body. You said something a little bit ago about then not losing the attention as you continue to start to work through
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
How does one stay focused, or how does someone not get bored or distracted or whatever from start to finish on something like this?
I think what the most important thing is that to realize that that original idea came from a part of us that is beyond ourselves in a way. It's that field of creative intelligence. That's one way I talk about it. And so we need to we need to learn how to, and be willing to continue to tap into that field of creative intelligence so that what we're doing is, it's like a dance. It's like we're co-creating with the universe. We're not just doing it on our own. And that's been a big thing for me, is because my way has been to do things on my own. And I don't mean not collaborate, but to think, oh, I'm just in this myself. I'm exhausted. How can I do what I need to do? Because I see all the things that need to happen. But that energy of co creation means I can go inside, I can get quiet, I can sense into what is it I'm needing to do now, and I can call in the resources. And while that might look, that might be the energetic resources, that I need, it also might be very specific of, you need an online business manager. Okay, what does that look like? Who who am I to contact? Call so and so, and I call so and so, and they have some recommendations. Or because I've come to the place of saying, oh, that's what I need. You know how that works. Suddenly, those people are stepping into your world. And if we're not paying attention, if we're not acknowledging how this is all working, that co-creation is in motion, we're going to miss it. And we're going to miss our timing because we're going to say, we're going to push it off. We're going to get so busy with all the things that life has a way of presenting to us, because our ego self, that part of the brain, the amygdala, that has to do with keeping us safe, it's going to kick into gear and say, don't listen to that. And that amygdala is strong and it's kept us safe. We needed that at some point in our life. We don't need to worry about the saber-toothed tiger anymore.
Yeah, that rings true with me. My coaching program that I was involved with for 3 years, it was a financial advisor coaching program where I, as an advisor, was a participant in the program. And coach, her name was Stephanie. She was on the podcast here just recently. Talked about how your amygdala is basically meant to just keep you alive, and you said it perfectly. I mean, it's basically your body and your brain is trying to not get eaten by the tiger and die because it's trying to keep you alive. And so you are correct. We are not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore.
There's one more piece to this. Well, there's lots more pieces, but one more piece that I want to bring out here. This is where my self-doubt would get triggered by my amygdala saying, I'd get this brilliant insight, inspiration, and my amygdala would quickly come in and kind of swat it out of the way, saying, you can't trust that. You couldn't possibly be. And so going back to my original, how I grew up, that feeling of, oh, other people know about this stuff, but I really want to. It was like a part of me always knew. And I've had to learn how to remember. I've had to remember in a way, what I came in knowing. And part of that has been having discernment. And so discernment is a really key piece of what I teach. how to have discernment from when it's that amygdala or the ego voice and when it's the truth of your own inner heart that is wanting you to pay attention. And part of that, and this is, it's a much bigger thing. That's one of the things that I teach in my Inner Compass program. But part of that is paying attention to the feeling body, because the body will give us those kind of messages or cues. That's not the right way. You're going into a situation and you suddenly feel like, whoa, I'm back. I've got to back up here. Well, why not? I'm really looking forward to meeting these people, and I'm excited. And if I take a moment right there when I'm having that intuition or that gut instinct, if I take a moment right then to stop and say, okay, I'm going to pay attention to you. And I teach people how to ask questions of themselves inside to get that kind of guidance, to fine tune their intuition. So it's beyond intuition, really. It's very much beyond intuition. And it's fine tuning that resource, because that's what's going to start help them be able to take their idea into fruition, into revenue. It's not It is, but it's not just following all the steps that someone has given you to do it. And I really want to say, oftentimes it's the best where I have seen people be most successful is when they have been willing to trust these inner whispers, to trust the nudges, to learn how to develop that into a real reliable system for themselves. So it's not about people coming to me and I'm going to tell them what to do. It's about me teaching them how to be their own best guide.
So you had said you teach the questions to ask. So what would an example of one of those questions be for those of us that hear the whisper? We trust it, we feel it, and then we need to discern. We need to kind of let that, for lack of any other way to put it, chew on it or let it marinate a little bit. What would be an example of a question that we could use to ask ourselves?
I'm going to answer this in a broader way, and I will still answer that question because it strikes me that everybody has a different way of interacting with this. Some people get dreams, and I want to say, pay attention to your dreams. Pay attention to what they're calling you um, to do or to ask or to know. Uh, Dreams, nudges, whispers. The first question that I often ask, and I'll do this with writing because it's easier to do sometimes with writing and learning how to use what I call using the pen as the witness. So it's letting that come and then seeing how it feels in the body. But that's a longer process to teach. But some of the questions that I suggest that people ask are things like, in a broad way, what am I needing to know about this idea? Is this for now? Is this for me? Because there's a lot of people that are really, really sensitive. In my system, they would be what I call the creative dreamer, and they get lots of ideas. I mean, getting ideas is the easiest thing in the world. Some people are very sensitive and they pick up because ideas are floating out there in the field, in this undifferentiated field. They're floating out there. And if I'm sensitive, I'm going to pick up on some of those. So I might get really excited by an idea. And if I don't ask myself, is this one for me? Nope. I'm going to be, running down a rabbit hole. Yeah, it's a great idea. But maybe it's and because this often happens when I'm with people one on one, or actually in a group as well, I will pick up what's really for someone else. So asking that question right away helps me to sort that out and to know, oh no, this one's not for you. Or if I'm asking about timing, put this one on hold. And because maybe it's something that I need to do 3 years down the road that I need to look at then. But what I will do with that is to keep checking in because things change all the time. And it's really important to stay current with that. So I will revisit something. Am I to do this now? Am I to act on this now? What else am I needing to know about it? Hmm, one that is more subtle, but I'll put it out here because it just occurred to me. Is this true or am I being tested? Now that's a little out there. And what I mean by that is that we are co-creating with the universe. We're co-creating, if you want to look at it this way, with a much larger um, state of awareness than we might ordinarily appreciate. And if we're co-creating with presence, sometimes we're tested like, are you really going to do something? Are you going to take action? Because action is what's needed to take the next steps. If we're just listening, if we're just being quiet, we will never act. And so a question might be, what one action am I needing to take right now? What's my next step? And even when I get that information, I'm writing it down. I recommend to people that they set whatever they wrote aside and then they go back to it a little later on, that let their body get quiet, they get relaxed because it it's the heart center. It's that inner part of us that has the ability to discern. Our head really doesn't. Our head only knows what it already knows. And we're going for what's beyond what we already know. So as we're tuning into that, that's what intuition's about. We're tuning into something that is beyond what our mental self is already knowing about. So I'm going to tune into that and see what is needed in that moment.
Very good. Very good. So basically, what is the next step? I mean, that's one of those, that's like one of my favorite phrases for this whole last 2 years is all right, what's next? What's next? What is the next best step for us to take whatever this idea is or whatever task we're even on to the next level? So I love that. Is there anything else you would like to share regarding how to take our whispers to a reality? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Start to develop trust in yourself. If you're always looking outside for, is someone else going to approve of my idea or my action? Um, is is someone else going to dismiss this? You're not going to be able to hear those inner whispers and you're not going to know what's the right next step for you because there really is that partnership. I could call it of self with self, my personal self with presence or God self or whatever you want to call that or the universe. And as I as I allow that, as I pay attention to that, it's like a dance. And if I always want to lead my personal self, I'm going to miss out on some of those things.
I'm hearing 3 things, and I'm just kinda summarize for what we just talked about, and we'll even get to these as takeaways, but I'm hearing really slow down and be quiet with yourself so that you can
Hmm.
allow
Hmm.
those whispers. I love the term whispers, but the inner thoughts, the whispers, the nudges, whatever, slow down and be quiet so you can allow them to have a voice. I'm then hearing test yourself. Ask the questions. Is this for me? Is this for now? Is this what I should be doing? That's what I'm hearing. And then the other one, I love your last one was trust yourself. And I'm sure there's 850 other things, but in the simplest of terms, I'm hearing those 3 things. Does that land with you?
It does. It does. And the trusting really is trusting that you are not here alone and that there is that whole part of you. You as a whole human being are not just connected to this universal field. You are you are of it. And so being of it, the same essential waves and particles, you get to tune into it. But if you don't trust it, you're not listening to the whispers. You won't listen to the whispers.
Yeah, that's a huge part, is being able to trust those whispers and realize that most of those whispers are not going to bankrupt you. Most of those whispers are not going to, ruin your financial situation or ruin your life. I mean, most of them are going to help you. I mean, that's what I could say from my life, is those whispers generally take you down a road that is better than the road you were on before. It just keeps getting better, is what I've noticed.
Can I tell one more quick story?
Please, please do.
Okay, because I'm thinking about somebody that I worked with a long time ago who was within a company and had been quite actually a fairly low level part of the company. She was offered an opportunity to work with a product, and it didn't sound sexy at all, but she had been trained to listen to the whispers. And she was guided by her own inner guidance system to take it. Well, I can tell you that taking that opened this door and then this door and then this door, and it just continued until she was way up in the company. And this was a very, very large Fortune 100 company because she had done that one step. That one, I mean, and she did more. It's not that she stopped, but that was such a pivotal moment for her in her own journey.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to be able to acknowledge those pivotal moments, because then when you do and you're grateful for, oh, I did listen, you get to see the more you do it. That's the other piece. The more you do it, the more it happens.
It's like a muscle.
It's like a muscle. It is.
Hmm.
It's our inner GPS.
Yes, I absolutely love that. Well, Lori, this is a podcast about money. And during this podcast about money, I ask three questions of every one of my guests that come on. And the first question is what is the smartest thing you've ever done regarding money? And tell me that story.
Hmm. Probably the story that is most recent is most pivotal too for me. I mean, I could tell you a lot of stories about how I needed to get support and because I thought I had to do it alone. But this is very tangible and practical. And it was in the midst of, I guess, the beginning part of the pandemic. And while so much of my business was online, it wasn't an issue for me of losing business. Actually, I gained business. Some parts of my business I couldn't do because they were in person. But I started really getting concerned because I was watching the economy, watching what was happening. I was really getting concerned about my portfolio. And in a very simple way, I ended up contracting to get it professionally managed. And what I can tell you is it was like, oh, I was really, I'm a very aggressive investor. And so I had to, work with, because I'm at the time in my life where I can't afford to lose all of this, but I
Hmm.
still want to keep things growing. I'm growing every day. I feel like, oh, I'm in a startup, because there's so many new things that are always unfolding. But for me, it was the willingness to, well, part of that is accepting help, to say, I can't do this on my own. I don't want to do it on my own. Let me get this professionally managed. So it's like I'm so grateful for people like you who do this kind of thing and teach us what to do.
You couldn't have said anything better. That's fantastic. I like that. So that's like a total plug for people like me. Thank you for that. So
You're
that's it. That's
welcome.
a great story.
And you didn't tell me to say it. I'll say that really upfront.
Yeah,
No, but
thank you.
it's been a real game changer for me because I can relax around it.
Yeah, that to piggyback on that, I brought a client on at the end of 2021, and her big thing was, I am so relieved that I don't have to worry about these accounts anymore, that you are watching them for me. And it was the same thing that you just said. It was just like a, I can move on and deal with the other things in my life that I need to deal with. But this one, I am so thrilled that someone else has taken it over. So it's amazing that peace of mind that comes in when you choose to have a professional help you. It doesn't even matter what it is, but that, money management is one of those things that is just so stinking emotional that when you can offload it to someone else, it is a very, frankly, very freeing feeling for you on the other end.
It absolutely is. And it lets me do what I'm really here to do because I'm doing what is absolutely aligned with what I'm here to do, what my purpose is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But handling my portfolio is not. It is my electrical engineer brother. He loves it. He does it and he's fabulous. Not for me.
Yep. And I'm thankful for people like you that it's not for you, because then people like me have a business. So thank you for that.
Exactly. You are welcome.
So let's go to the other side. What's the biggest money mistake you've ever made? And tell me that story.
Ugh, do I have to? And it's not one single story. It is a pattern of mm, really not addressing my old stories about money, that I couldn't have it, that not so much that money was bad, but I did not grow up with money at all. I grew up with a mother that knew about struggle. And my dad died when I was very, very young. That pushed us into a whole situation where struggle was the name of the game. And so I carried that. And so the biggest mistake I could see for a long, long time, this is why I didn't want to admit this, is that I didn't pay attention to my numbers. I remember the first time somebody asking me, a close friend was saying, so, how are your stats doing on your website? I had a new website. Why would I want to look at that?
Hmm.
So working with that to be able to start to come to terms with my own history with money and to let go of those, and to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to just be all, airy fairy here. I'm going to because I'm not. Let me bring this piece in because it's so essential.
It's very good. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being a bit vulnerable for us. Thank you. Yeah. So, the last question regarding money: what does mastering your finances mean to you?
Mm. It really has to do with a lot of things that we've already been talking about. It has to do with being congruent with myself, so that money mastery is the same as any other kind of congruence. My teacher used to say that, and she didn't have money stories, that money has the same energy in the physical as love does in the metaphysical. And we want abundance with our love. Let's have abundance with our money too, because it's the same thing. It's an energy exchange. When someone comes and I say, yep, this is what I charge for this, they get everything from me that I have to give. And it's not about what they're paying me. I mean, it is, but it's an energy exchange, and it's a willingness to acknowledge that I am available to receive.
You know what? That's really good, because one of the things that rings true for solopreneurs is the ability to, let me rephrase, let me start back over. Solopreneurs, by and large, especially when they're getting started, do not charge a proper value for what they're offering. And there's all kinds of reasons why. But once they start to charge full value of what they're offering, then that fantastic exchange of energy comes in. Like you just stated, as your feeling of mastery is that exchange of, all right, I am at a point in my career, my life, my world, that I am able to charge a very fair rate. And in return, I am going to give above and beyond value for that. So that's that exchange of energy. And you're going to, like you said, you're going to give them all you have. And so I really like that idea of mastery. And for any of you solopreneurs that are listening, make sure you're charging a full value for what you're worth. And if you don't know what that full value is, there's multiple episodes that I've done on how to figure out what your overhead is and your profit needs to be and the other pieces of the puzzle, so that when you do go charge X amount of dollars per hour or per work you're doing, you're actually getting, you know, the same value in return. Because you're right, money really is an exchange of energy. I like the way you put that.
And that's why it's so important to me personally that people do bring their ideas into manifestation, and that manifest, and part of that manifestation is revenue, because then you can get to keep doing it and you can get to grow it, and your expression gets bigger and clearer and you impact more people, even if you're not wanting to have, be standing in front of 50,000 people for a lecture. You are there in the way that you are needing to be. That's fullness.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So, how can my listeners find you, Lori?
Mm. The best place is I'm on all the social media. So, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram. The best place, though, to reach me is on my website, which is the Baca, that's BACA, Institute.com. And the Baca, I just real quick, the Baca is the name came from um, a group of us who for 20 years would meet down in southern Colorado at a place called the Baca Grande. And we were scientists, teachers, business people, therapists, artists, and we were focusing on how are our lives changing as we learn how to focus in this way, as we learn how to focus and be with that co-creative intelligence. And so when I started this last, iteration of myself, um, I named it the Baca Journey. And then more recently, in the last couple of years, because of the kind of work I'm doing, I needed a bigger umbrella, and it became the Baca Institute. So the bacainstitute.com is where people can find me. I can find lots and lots and lots of articles to read, and they can find my creative innovator style quiz. It's a wonderful way to get more information about what's your way of creating in the world. And I don't mean your artistic ability. I mean, are you a creative dreamer? Are you a bridge builder? And what does it mean to be that? What are your superpowers? And what are the things that might help you on your own journey to learn more about, to develop? So you get all of that in that quiz, and when you come on, you also get my ebook, which is really a way to. It's an ebook about activating your co-creative power. It's 7 awareness provoking experiences. So it's really simple, fun experiences to do over the course of a week, or you can extend it out over that, to start to develop your own ability to pay attention, your own ability to hear those whispers.
That's great. I have to say, I have not talked to anybody that has come up with a cooler name for their website than that. That is awesome. It's so much cooler than GabeNelsonFinancial.com.
Although, I mean, then they know it's you. I've had to go through other struggles with that of, well, what? Who?
Well, when you can connect the story to it, it's fantastic. I think that is, I really like that. And you are correct. Then they know it's me on my side of it as well. So, is there anything else you would like to share?
Hmm. Really quickly, what I'd like to share is the power of taking a breath, because the breath is what connects us with that field. It's what allows us to bring in all of those resources that are there for us. And when I take a conscious breath, and I really mean not just, we breathe automatically all the time, but to take a conscious breath in and feel the way the breath moves through your body. I recommend to take it into the center of your chest, because it's a different thing than the belly breathing. And this is just lets your body relax, and it moves you into that place of connection.
I like it. That is, and I remember even pieces of that in that whole coaching program was the slowing down and the taking of a breath and allowing yourself to settle so that you are ready to listen, ready to observe, ready to take everything in.
And then ready to take action, because I don't want to forget that piece. If we're just listening, we'll never get anywhere.
That's a great way to end. Thank you very much, Laurie, for being on Solopreneur Money.
Thank you, Gabe, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, solopreneurs, I hope you enjoyed this conversation that I had with Laurie Seymour of the Baca Institute. All of her contact information will all be in the show notes that you can go check out. Here's my three, actually, I'm going to call it 4 takeaways for you to allow yourself to listen to the whispers and turn them into revenue. Number 1, slow down and be quiet, which gives you the ability to listen. Number 2, query yourself. Ask yourself a few questions. Is this for me? Is this for now? What are those questions that you could be asking to determine if that whisper is something that you should follow up on? The next piece is to trust yourself with your whispers. And when you do trust yourself, then it's a matter of, okay, well, what's the next step? And then the fourth takeaway is take action that is aligned with your own inner guidance so that you are taking action, which then sticks with your values and where you really want to go with your life and your business and everything else that comes with it. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If you have not had a chance to get your copy of the Solopreneurs Money Manifesto, please go to Amazon and go ahead and purchase ebook, paperback, hardcover, whichever you like. And by the way, if you do a review after you purchase, send me a copy via LinkedIn or even email. And if I can see that you actually gave a review and put it out there, I will send you a signed copy of my book. And you can obviously send that to me through private message or via email so that we don't have your address floating all over the internet and, as people would call, the interwebs. Thank you very much for listening. Have a fantastic day and take care.